Okay, I want you to try something with me for a second. Just close your eyes. And I want you to picture a scale. Not, a bathroom scale, but one of those huge cosmic-looking ones.
Like a scale for planets.
Exactly. Something Lady Justice would hold if she were like the size of a galaxy. Now, on one side of that scale, I want you to imagine piling up every single human being on Earth right now.
That is a lot of people. We're talking, what, nearly 8 billion?
Almost 8 billion people.
Yeah.
Every single one. From a CEO in a skyscraper to a farmer in a remote village, every newborn, every grandparent, all of them.
Boy, I am picturing it. It's a huge pile.
It is. And if you could actually weigh that pile, the total biomass of humanity, it would come out to roughly 300 million tons.
300 million tons of people.
That's the weight of us. Now, keep us on that side of the scale, but let's add our entourage, the animals we've domesticated.
The ones we brought along for the ride.
Right. The cows, the pigs, the chickens, the sheep, all the animals that we use for food or labor.
The industrial farm animals, basically.
Basically. Now, that pile of animals, it dwarfs us. It weighs around 700 million tons.
Wow. More than double our own weight.
So if you combine Team Human, that's us and our livestock, we're sitting at a nice round 1 billion tons of life.
Okay. 1 billion tons. So, what's on the other side of the scale?
This is the part that gets me. On the other side, pile up every large wild animal left on the planet.
So we're talking about the things we see on nature documentaries.
Exactly. The whales, the elephants, the penguins, the lions, the giraffes, the bears. All of it. Everything that's supposed to make the world feel vast and wild, you put them all on the other side of the scale.
I have a feeling it's not going to balance.
It doesn't just not balance. The side with the wild animals flies up into the air. It's not even contest. All of them combined way less than 100 million tons.
So 1 billion tons of us and our food versus less than 100 million tons of everything else.
It's a 10-to-1 ratio, and that's being generous. And that statistic it completely stopped me in my tracks because it feels so wrong.
It feels like a lie.
It does. Because you look at our culture, you look at the books we read our kids, it's all about the friendly giraffe and the clever chimpanzee. We tell ourselves this story that the world is this big, untamed wilderness that we're just a small part of.
But the numbers tell a very different story. The reality is that the planet's biomass is now overwhelmingly just us and the things we've chosen to farm. The wild is a refugee camp.
And that biological takeover, I think, is the perfect physical metaphor for what we're going to be talking about today. We're doing a deep dive into a source called A Permanent Revolution. And its whole argument is that the Industrial Revolution wasn't really about machines.
Not at its core, no. The steam engines and the factories, those were just the tools. The real revolution was what it did to us. To our minds, to our societies.
It's the moment Homo sapiens kind of stopped adapting to the ecosystem and instead decided to just force the ecosystem to adapt to us on a planetary scale.
Exactly. And what's so fascinating about this source and what we're going to explore is that we're not going to get bogged down in the mechanics of a steam engine. We're going to talk about the software update that it installed in all of our brains.
That's the mission for this deep dive.
Right.
We're going to unpack how this one historical shift completely re-engineered really 3 pillars of what it means to be human.
Our sense of time, our concept of family, and weirdly enough, our understanding of peace.
Right. Because the source argues that the reason you feel anxious about being 5 minutes late for a meeting, the reason you probably don't live in a house with all of your cousins, and the fact that you aren't currently worried about being drafted to fight a war with your neighbors, all of those things are direct results of this same revolution.
It's this replacement of natural organic rhythms with artificial mechanical ones. And I think the best place to start, most fundamental place, is that first pillar, time.
Industrial time.
Because the way you and I experience a Tuesday afternoon is it's bizarre. It's profoundly weird compared to how humans lived for 99% of our history.
Yeah, the source has this great thought experiment to illustrate that. The time traveler scenario.
It's a classic. So you take a modern person with a smartphone and a wristwatch, and you drop them into a medieval village, let's say France in the 1300s.
Okay.
You walk up to a peasant working in a field, and you ask him, "Excuse me, sir, what year is it?"
He'd just stare at you.
He'd think you were either a demon or completely insane, not just because of your clothes, but because the question itself it's meaningless to him. It doesn't compute.
He wouldn't know the year.
Almost certainly not. He probably wouldn't know the month. He definitely wouldn't know the exact time of day. He might say after midday, but that's about it.
Which is so hard for us to get our heads around. I feel a low-grade panic if my phone dies and I don't know the time for an hour.
Yeah.
How did an entire society function like that?
Well, they functioned on what you could call agricultural time. It's the rhythm of nature. It's the rhythm of the sun and the seasons.
So you don't wake up at 6:30 a.m. because an alarm clock screams at you.
No, you wake up because the sun is coming through your window and the rooster is crowing. You don't break for lunch at noon on the dot. You eat when your stomach tells you you're hungry.
And your workday is just daylight.
Exactly. You work when there's light. You stop when it gets dark. In the summer, during the harvest, you might work for 18 hours straight. In the dead of winter, you might only work for 5 or 6. It's fluid. It's responsive to the environment.
There's no stress about being on time because there's nothing to be precise for.
Precisely. And that whole system worked just fine because production, for the most part, was individual.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the shoe factory analogy in the source. I think this is the key to understanding why everything had to change.
This was the real light bulb moment for me. So, okay, in the old world, the pre-industrial world, you have a shoemaker, a cobbler.
Let's call him Hans. Hans the cobbler.
Hans the cobbler. So Hans is a craftsman, right? He gets a piece of leather and he does everything. He cuts it, he stitches it, he punches the little holes for the laces, he puts on the sole, he makes an entire shoe.
From start to finish, it's his creation. Now, let's say Hans, I don't know, he had a bit too much wine the night before, he oversleeps, he doesn't get to his workshop until 10 in the morning instead of 8.
Okay, so what's the consequence?
Not much, really. He just finishes that pair of shoes a couple of hours later. Or maybe he works a bit later into the evening. The customer might have to wait an extra day, but the system doesn't break down.
His timeline is his own. It's independent.
Totally. But then the revolution hits. A big factory opens up outside of town, and Hans is no longer Hans the cobbler. He is now worker number 43 on an assembly line.
And he doesn't make shoes anymore.
No, he does one single repetitive task. He operates the machine that pulls a lever that punches the eyelets for the laces. That is his entire job, 8 hours a day.
And he has to do it at the precise moment that the piece of leather arrives from worker number 42.
And just before as to move on to worker number 44, who threads the first lace, this is the fundamental shift. Now, if Hans shows up 5 minutes late,
Oh, it's a disaster.
it's a total catastrophe. He doesn't just delay his own work, he brings the entire factory to a grinding halt. Worker 42 has a pile of leather he can't get rid of. Worker 44 is standing there with his hands in his pockets. The whole multi-million-dollar machine stalls.
So simply because of the assembly line, because of mass production, human life had to be synchronized. You couldn't just have people showing up whenever they felt like it.
It was the birth of industrial time. The clock went from being a novelty for the rich to being the absolute dictator of life for the masses. For the first time, you have this artificial, rigid grid laid over the lives of millions of people.
Everyone starts at 8:00 a.m. sharp.
Everyone takes a lunch break at 12:00, and it doesn't matter if you're hungry or not. The whistle blows, you eat. The whistle blows again, you go back to work.
And everyone leads at 5:00.
Oh,
It's
yes.
a machine made of people.
That's a perfect way to put it. And it reminds me of that famous scene from the Charlie Chaplin movie Modern Times.
Right, where he gets sucked into the gears of the giant machine.
And, as a kid, I always thought that was just, funny slapstick. But reading this source, it feels more like a horror movie.
It's a perfect visual metaphor.
It is. It's about how we didn't just use the machines. We had to become parts of the machine. Our bodies, our minds had to conform to its rhythm.
We internalize the mechanism. And the truly crazy part is how quickly that logic spread out from the factory floor and took over everything else.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just about making widgets anymore. Think about our schools. Why are schools run by bells? Why do we sort children into batches based on their manufacturing date, their age, and then move them from room to room, subject to subject, at the sound of a buzzer?
It's a factory for people.
It's literally training for the industrial workforce. From the age of 5, we teach children to ignore their natural urges. Don't talk, don't move, don't be curious about that thing over there. Sit down, be quiet, and do what the schedule says until the bell tells you to do something else.
By the time you graduate, you're a perfectly programmed unit ready to be slotted into the grid of an office or a factory.
And it infected every corner of society. The source has this great little detail about pubs.
That was hilarious and also kind of depressing.
Right. The idea that if the factory shift ends at precisely 5:00 p.m., The pub down the street has to be ready to open its doors at 5:02 p.m.
Not 5.15, not 4.5, dear.
No, it has to be perfectly synchronized to catch the wave of thirsty workers pouring out of the factory. The entire community becomes an extension of the factory's timetable.
But there was a huge problem with scaling this up, right? It's one thing to sync up a single town. It's another thing to sync up an entire country.
This is where the trains come in. And this part of the story is just, it's a fantastic illustration of the problem.
The chaos of local time. It's so hard to even imagine now.
It is. Before the mid-1800s, there was no such thing as national time. Every single town had its own time, and it was determined by the sun. Noon was simply the moment when the sun was at its highest point in the sky, right above your town square.
So noon in London was a different actual moment than noon in Bristol.
Exactly. Noon in Bristol was about 10 minutes after noon in London. Noon in Liverpool was 20 minutes after. Every city was its own little time bubble.
Which I guess didn't really matter when the fastest you could travel was the speed of a horse.
Right. A trip from London to Liverpool took days. You wouldn't even notice the minutes shifting. If you were wealthy enough to own a pocket watch, you'd just, reset it when you got to your destination. No big deal.
But then, in what was really the blink of an eye historically, we invent high-speed railways.
And suddenly you can travel so fast that these local time differences become an absolute nightmare.
A logistical disaster.
A literal disaster in some cases. I mean, just try to imagine printing a national train schedule. The train departs London at 10 a.m. London time and arrives in Bristol at 11:50 a.m. London time, which is actually 11:40 a.m. Bristol time. It was completely unworkable.
And trains were actually crashing.
They were, because station masters and conductors in different towns were operating off clocks that were minutes apart. It was chaos.
So the railway companies just took matters into their own hands.
They basically staged a quiet coup against the sun. In 1847, a group of British railway companies all got together and they just declared, that's it, we're done with local time. From this day forward, every station, every clock, every train on our entire network will run on one time, Greenwich Observatory time.
They didn't even ask the government?
Nope, they just did it. It was a purely commercial decision to make their business work. And for a while, you had this weird situation where a town would have two clocks. The church clock would show local sun time, and the railway station clock would show railway time.
But eventually, everyone had to give in.
They had to. The government finally made it law in 1880. And that, according to the source, is a truly pivotal moment in human history. It's the first time an entire nation was legally forced to abandon the natural rhythm of the sun and live by a single, artificial, mechanical time.
We divorced ourselves from the cosmos.
We did, and we never went back. And now look at us. We are obsessed with precision. The source points out just how many clocks are in our daily lives. I did a quick count in my own kitchen this morning.
How many?
Oven, microwave, coffee maker, my phone, my watch, the little clock on the cable box. I think I hit 6 or 7 without even trying.
And you compare that to, say, a wealthy medieval king. The most powerful person of his era. He might have had a sundial, maybe a fancy water clock if he was a tech geek.
But he lived in this timeless flow. We are constantly surrounded by the ticking. We are bombarded by it.
It completely changes our sense of value, too. The source uses this example of heating up a bagel, and I have to say, I felt very seen.
The microwave bagel?
Yes. When I put a bagel in the microwave, I don't just set it for a minute, I set it for 50 seconds. Because I have learned, through trial and error, that 40 seconds isn't quite enough, and 60 seconds makes it a little too chewy.
You've optimized your bagel experience to a 10-second tolerance.
I am slicing my life into these tiny increments to optimize a piece of bread. And that, right there, feels like the ultimate victory of industrial time. We treat every second as a resource that can't be wasted.
It's the 50-minute therapy hour, the 30-second commercial slot, the 3-minute pop song. We have become hyper-efficient, but the cost is this background hum of anxiety, this constant feeling that we're falling behind a schedule that we can't even see.
There is one story in the source, though, that takes this obsession with precision to the most extreme, high-stakes level imaginable. The story about Big Ben during World War II.
Oh, this is just a fantastic piece of history, truly remarkable.
So it's the middle of the war. The BBC is broadcasting its news service into Nazi-occupied Europe. And as a symbol of defiance, of resilience, they start every broadcast with the live sound of the Big Ben bells tolling over London.
Bong! Bong! It was a message, right? We're still here. We're still fighting.
A huge morale booster. But the Germans weren't just listening for morale. They were analyzing. They had physicists listening to these broadcasts
Which sounds crazy. Why would physicists be listening to a bell?
because they realized that the sound of the bell, the very specific pitch and tone of the bongs, was not perfectly consistent. It changed. And it changed based on the atmospheric conditions the sound was traveling through.
You're kidding me.
Not at all. Sound waves travel differently through cold, dense air than they do through warm, humid air. The tiny, almost imperceptible variations in the tone of the bell contain data.
So they were reverse engineering the weather.
They could calculate the temperature, the humidity, the barometric pressure in London just by listening to the radio. And why do they need London's weather?
To plan bombing raids for the Luftwaffe.
Exactly. They knew when the cloud cover would be best, when conditions were right to send their bombers. The British were accidentally broadcasting their own weather forecast directly to the enemy.
That is absolutely incredible. It's like something out of a spy novel.
Right. British intelligence eventually figured it out, and they had to replace the live bells with a pre-recorded sound. But it's just the perfect illustration of how deep this goes. Even something as poetic as the sound of a bell becomes a precise, weaponized data point in the industrial age.
It's the perfect transition, actually. Because if the Industrial Revolution could do that to something as abstract as time, if it could bend it into this rigid mechanical grid, just imagine what it did to something as messy and organic as the human family.
And this is our second pillar. The source calls it the Great Decoupling. And I'll be honest, this section hit me a lot harder than the stuff about clocks.
Yeah.
The time stuff is fascinating, but this feels more like a tragedy.
Well, the source makes a bold claim. It says, this was the most momentous social revolution in our species' history, more important than any king or empire. And to get it, we have to, again, look at what the world was like before.
The baseline.
The baseline. For literally millions of years, from the savannas of Africa to the villages of medieval Europe, humans lived in 3 concentric circles of belonging: the nuclear family, the extended family, and the local intimate community, the tribe.
And the source is very clear that this wasn't just about, love and holidays. We have this very modern, sentimental idea of family. But back then, your family was your survival kit.
It was everything. It was your entire infrastructure. I mean, think about it. There were no police forces. If someone stole your sheep, you and your cousins went and got it back.
There are no banks.
Right. If
Yeah.
you needed to borrow money to buy seeds, you asked your uncle. There were no retirement homes. When you got old and couldn't work, your children fed you. There were no insurance companies. If your house burned down, the village helped you rebuild it.
It was the economy of favors.
A perfect term for it. I help you with your harvest this fall. You help me mend my roof next spring. It was all built on a complex web of social obligations and reciprocity. Very little money actually changed hands for these essential services.
And the state, the king or the emperor, was just this distant, abstract thing.
The king was essentially the CEO of a large protection racket. You paid him taxes, and in return, he promised that some other king wouldn't invade your valley and burn it to the ground. But did he care if you were sick, if your kids were educated, if you were lonely?
Absolutely not. That wasn't his job. That was the family's job.
But then the factories start to hum, the cities start to swell, and the Industrial Revolution kicks into high gear. And suddenly, the 2 new superpowers, the state and the market, they look at this old system and they see a problem.
The family is in the way.
It's an obstacle. It's a competitor. If your primary loyalty is to your clan, you're not going to be a very good employee or a very good citizen. You won't move 200 miles away for a factory job if it means leaving your support system. You won't obey the national police if you believe your family's honor is more important.
So the state and the market needed to break the family's monopoly on human life.
And they did it by making the individual an offer. The source frames this as a kind of seduction.
A deal with the devil, almost.
Almost. The state and the market came to the individual person and they whispered in their ear. They said, look at your life. Your family is. It's stifling, isn't it? Your father tells you who you have to marry. Your village elders tell you what you have to believe. It's oppressive. You have no freedom.
Leave them. Come with us. Be an individual.
And we will take care of you. We will become your new family. You don't need your cousins to protect you anymore. We have the police and the courts. You don't need your children to care for you in old age. We have pensions and nursing homes. You don't need your uncle for a loan. We have banks. You don't need your village to find a partner. We have bars and dating apps.
We traded one dependency for another.
Exactly. And this gets to a really profound point the source makes. We have this modern myth of the rugged individual fighting against the big bad state, the rebel hero.
But the source says that's completely backwards.
It's the opposite of the truth. The state and the market are the parents of the modern individual. You can only be an individual because these massive impersonal systems exist to catch you.
Right. If I drop you in the middle of a strange city in the year 1400 and you have no family, no
You're
connections,
dead. You're a ghost. You have no status, no protection. Someone can rob you or kill you in an alley, and literally no one cares. You don't belong to anyone.
but today I can get off a plane in Tokyo, not knowing a single soul, and I can rent a car, get a hotel room, buy a meal, and walk down the street in relative safety. Why?
Because the state of Japan and the global market have created a safety net that allows you to function without a tribe. They are your protector.
But the cost of that protection is alienation. We gained freedom, but we lost connection. We swapped the warm but sometimes suffocating embrace of the community for the cold but efficient embrace of the bureaucracy.
And we are now, as a result, more alone than any humans in history.
The source uses that chilling example of the modern high-rise apartment building.
It's such a powerful image. You can have a building with 500 people living in it. They share walls, they share pipes. They're physically closer to each other than any medieval villagers were.
They are strangers.
But they're strangers. They might not even know their next-door neighbor's name. They are 500 perfect individuals. And because of that, because they have no real bond, they are completely powerless.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if the city government decides to build a highway through their neighborhood playground, what can they do? They can't organize, they don't know each other, they have no shared trust, they'll just maybe sign an online petition that goes nowhere.
The source says they can't even agree on how much to pay the janitor, let alone fight City Hall.
Exactly. Whereas a real community, a tribe of 500 people, if you threaten their children's playground, you would have 500 people with pitchforks on your doorstep the next morning. We traded our collective power for individual liberty.
But that craving for community, for belonging,
Yeah.
that doesn't just go away, does it? Our brains are still wired for the tribe.
It's a deep primal need. So when the real intimate communities dissolved, we had to invent new ones to fill the void. The source calls these imagined communities.
Right, because you can't possibly know everyone in the group.
No, a real community is people whose faces you know, whose stories you know. An imagined community is made up of millions of strangers who are connected only by a shared story or a shared identity.
And the source identifies two major types that have rushed in to fill that gap.
The first one is the nation. This is the state's version of community. I am German. I am Japanese. I will never meet, 80 million other Germans. But I feel a bond with them. We share a language, a flag, a national anthem, a myth about a shared past and future, and I'm willing to pay taxes for them, and maybe even go to war for them.
And the second type is the consumer tribe. This is the market's version.
And this one feels incredibly modern. This is where your identity is no longer defined by your bloodline or your village, but by what you buy.
I'm a Madonna fan. I'm a Manchester United supporter. I'm an Apple person, not a PC person.
I'm a vegetarian. That example from the source was brilliant. The idea that a modern German vegetarian might feel she has more in common with a French vegetarian than with a fellow German who loves bratwurst.
Her consumer identity, her tribe, transcends her national identity.
It absolutely does. We wear brand logos on our shirts like they're tribal tattoos. We're signaling to other strangers, hey, you and I, we belong to the same group. We
Right.
both like this band or this football team or this type of coffee.
It's a way of finding connection in a world of strangers. But it feels, I don't know, a little thin, doesn't it?
It is thin, because your favorite brand of smartphone isn't going to take care of you when you're sick. The nation might, but only if you fill out the right forms in triplicate. It's a very different kind of belonging from the deep, messy, and powerful bonds of the old world.
So we've re-engineered our sense of time, we've dismantled the family and replaced it with these huge impersonal systems. Which brings us to the third pillar, the idea of stability, or maybe the lack of it.
Right, the perpetuum mobile, the perpetual motion machine.
This is a concept that's really hard to grasp, I think, because we're swimming in it. We just assume that constant change is the normal state of the world.
We do. But for that medieval peasant we talked about earlier, the most fundamental truth of the universe was the opposite. It was stability. The sun comes up, the sun goes down, the seasons turn, the king rules from his castle, the priest preaches from the Bible. Nothing ever really changes.
If you asked him what life would be like in 100 years,
He'd say, the same as it is now, of course. Social orders, for most of history, were designed to be rigid. They were designed to resist change. The goal was to preserve the eternal order of things.
And because they were so rigid, they were also very brittle.
Like glass, exactly. If a powerful new idea came along, a new technology, a new religious belief, the system couldn't bend, it couldn't absorb it, so it would shatter. You'd get a century of religious wars or bloody revolution.
But the modern social order is completely different. We don't just tolerate change, we actively expect it. We crave it.
We demand it. Just look at our politics. Can you imagine a politician running for office today on the slogan, "Vote for me, and I promise to keep everything exactly the same"?
They'd be laughed off the stage.
Completely. Even the most conservative politicians have to promise reform or growth or change. Change is the only constant. We live in a permanent state of revolution.
And the source points to the generation gap as a uniquely modern proof of this.
It's a phenomenon that just didn't exist for most of history. In the 1500s, a 50-year-old man could look at a 15-year-old boy and know with absolute certainty what that boy's life was going to be like, because it was going to be the same as his own.
But today, a 50-year-old looks at a 15-year-old on TikTok.
And it's like looking at an alien. I don't understand your language. I don't understand your values. I don't understand your technology. And the 15-year-old looks back and thinks, you're a dinosaur. Your knowledge is irrelevant.
This constant churn happens because the world changes so fundamentally within a single lifetime that experience itself becomes devalued.
But here's the Greek paradox, and this is the core of the perpetuum mobile idea. You would think that a society in constant frantic motion would be incredibly unstable. You'd think it would just fly apart.
But the source argues the exact opposite is true.
And this is the genius of the modern order. It's not brittle like glass. It's flexible like rubber or like a trampoline. Because we expect change, we can absorb shocks that would have utterly destroyed an ancient empire.
Give me an example of that.
Okay, think about the invention of the internet. In the space of about a decade, it completely shattered the centralized control of information that had existed for centuries. In a rigid, traditional society, that would have triggered a total collapse of authority, violent revolution.
But in our society,
We kind of just absorbed it. People complained, new laws were written, new trillion-dollar companies were formed, old industries died, and the system just kept on spinning. It mutated and adapted. It actually fed on the disruption.
so the constant instability is actually what makes it stable,
That's it. It stays upright because it's always moving, like riding a bicycle. The moment it stops, it will fall over.
which is a mind-bending idea. And it brings us to the final and probably the most counterintuitive pillar of them all,
Peace.
the pax atomica, the atomic peace. Because if our lives are this constant, anxious, revolutionary churn, if we're all alienated individuals, surely we must be more violent than ever.
You'd think so. I can almost hear our listeners thinking, peace? Are you serious? Have you watched the news lately?
It feels completely wrong. The world feels like it's on fire.
It does. But we have to step back from the daily headlines and look at the macro data. The source uses statistics from the early 2000s, but the overall trend has held pretty steady. Let's just take the year 2000 as a snapshot.
Okay, lay the numbers on me.
In the year 2000, the total number of people killed in all the wars on the entire planet was about 310,000.
It was a terrible number, a tragedy.
An absolute tragedy. But in that same year, the number of people killed in car accidents was 1.26 million.
Wow. So you're more than 4 times as likely to be killed by a Toyota than by a soldier.
And then there's the really dark one. The number of people who died by suicide in that same year, 815,000.
Almost 3 times the number of war casualties.
And if you jump forward to 2002, the gap gets even wider. War deaths dropped to about 172,000. Suicides went up to 873,000.
So for every 1 person killed in combat, 5 people took their own lives.
It leads to a staggering conclusion. For the average human being on planet Earth today, you are a far, far greater threat to your own life than all the soldiers, terrorists, and drug lords in the world combined.
We've managed to tame the tigers and the wolves and the rival tribes. The only major predator left for us is us, our own despair, our own machines.
Exactly, but why? This is the big question. Why has war, which was humanity's favorite and most glorious pastime for 10,000 years, suddenly become so rare? The source gives 4 main reasons.
Okay, let's walk through them. Number 1,
The price of war has become too high. This is the simple one. This is the nukes.
the Pax Atomica.
Yep. For all of history, you could win a war. The Romans could conquer Carthage, level the city, and get rich from it. But today, a war between the great powers, the US and China, say, is unwinnable. There is no victory. It's mutual annihilation. The price is literally infinite.
It's a suicide pact. And nobody wants to be the first to pull the trigger.
So it forces a certain level of, let's call it polite behavior between the superpowers.
Okay. Reason number 2. This is the one I found the most fascinating. The profits of war have gone down.
This is the shift from a material economy to a knowledge economy. The source uses the California gold rush as the perfect example.
Right. In 1849, California's wealth was gold. It was a physical thing in the ground.
It's material wealth. So if you were Mexico and you invaded California, you could capture the gold mines. You could literally dig the wealth up, put it in wagons, and take it home. War pays.
Same with oil fields or fertile farmland or diamond mines.
All lootable. But where is California's wealth today? It's not in the ground. It's in Silicon Valley. It's the source code in the heads of Google's engineers. It's the brand value in Apple's marketing department. It's knowledge.
So if China were to invade California today,
Just picture it. 1 million soldiers land on the beaches. What do they loot? You can't load an algorithm into a tank. The moment the invasion starts, the engineers and the venture capitalists are on private jets to Texas or Switzerland.
the wealth just evaporates.
It's gone. It's not there to be conquered. In a knowledge-based economy, war becomes catastrophically unprofitable. You spend trillions on the invasion, and all you capture are empty office buildings with nice snack bars.
Which also explains why the wars that do still happen are often in places where the wealth is still material.
It's a perfect correlation. War is still viable in the Middle East because you can capture oil wells. It's viable in parts of Africa because you can capture mines. But you don't see Germany planning an invasion of Sweden to capture the Spotify algorithm.
Okay, so war is too expensive and it's not profitable. What's reason number 3?
The profits of peace have gone way up. In a word, trade.
The idea that we're all too economically tangled up to fight each other.
Right. In the ancient world, China and the Roman Empire didn't really trade that much. If Rome conquered a territory, they just took its wealth. But today, the global economy is one single, gigantic, interconnected organism. If the Chinese economy goes into a depression, Wall Street has a panic attack.
We're joined at the hip.
We're like Siamese twins joined at the wallet. You can't punch the other twin in the face without breaking your own hand. Peace is just much more profitable for everyone than war is.
And the 4th and final reason.
This one is cultural. It's a shift in our values. We often overlook it, but for most of history, the elites, the kings, the nobles, the emperors, they thought war was great.
It was glorious, honorable.
It was the noblest pursuit of man. It was how you proved your courage, won glory, and served your god. Even as late as 1914, you had young aristocrats in Europe who were genuinely excited to go off to war. They saw it as a grand adventure.
And today?
Today, war is almost universally seen as evil, as a failure. Even the most aggressive leaders have to pay lip service to peace. When a country invades another, they don't say, "We're doing this for glory and plunder."
They say it's a special military operation or a mission to promote democracy.
The language itself has changed because our underlying values have changed. For the first time in history, the people in charge see war not as an opportunity, but as a last resort and a terrible tragedy.
And the source has a name for this new state of affairs. It's not just the absence of war, it calls it real peace.
And the definition of real peace is the implausibility of war. It's when the very idea of two countries fighting becomes laughable.
The example it uses is perfect. France and Germany.
In 1914, war between France and Germany wasn't just plausible, it was expected, it was inevitable. But today, the idea of German tanks rolling towards Paris it's the plot of a terrible action movie. It's absurd.
It's not just that it isn't happening, it's that we can't even seriously imagine it happening. That's real peace.
And that peace now exists between most of the world's major powers. A war between, say, Brazil and Argentina is just as unthinkable.
So when you add it all up, it's an incredible list of trade-offs, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
We've walked through this whole revolution. We gave up the sun's rhythm for the factory's clock. We gave up the clan for the individual. We gave up stability for constant change. And we gave up the glory of endless war for a fragile peace guaranteed by the threat of total annihilation.
That is the modern bargain in a nutshell. We are richer, freer, and safer from violence than any humans who have ever lived. But we are also more anxious, more lonely, and living under a permanent nuclear sword of Damocles.
The source concludes on this very dramatic note, that we are standing on a threshold. We've achieved godlike powers. We can manipulate atoms. We can edit genes. We control the very biomass of the planet. But we have no idea if we're using those powers to build heaven or to pave the road to hell.
And history hasn't decided yet which way it's going to go. That uncertainty is the defining feature of our age.
There is one final provocative image from the source that I can't shake. It's a dark little thought experiment, but it's a powerful one. It's about the rats.
Ah, yes. Our potential inheritors.
The source speculates that if we do blow it, if the Pax Atomica fails and we incinerate the planet, humanity might go extinct. But life itself will go on. Yeah, and species like rats and cockroaches, well, they're doing great. They love our cities. They thrive in our waste.
They are the shadow beneficiaries of our revolution.
Right. So the thought experiment is this. Fast forward 65 million years into the future. A new intelligent species has evolved on Earth. Let's say they're intelligent bipedal rats. And these rat paleontologists are digging through the layers of rock.
And they find our layer, the Anthropocene.
They find a thin layer of plastic, radioactive isotopes, and the fossilized ruins of our civilization. And the source asks, how will they see us? What will they think of us? And it suggests they might actually be grateful.
In the same way that we're grateful to the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs.
Exactly. We look at that asteroid impact as a good thing. It was a catastrophe for the dinosaurs, but it cleared the stage for us, for mammals, to rise up and take over. These future rat people might look at the layer of nuclear ash we left behind and build monuments to us.
Thank you, Homo sapiens. You were a destructive, crazy species, but in destroying yourselves, you gave us the world.
It just leaves you with that question, doesn't it? Are we the pinnacle of evolution, the masters of the planet, or are we just the asteroid?
That's a thought to sit with.
On that note, I think I'm going to go have a very precisely timed bagel and contemplate our place in the cosmos.
Just try not to let it burn. Every second counts.